Welcome to another episode of The Learning Curve. I am your host, Julia McLeod. Before we begin, please join me in prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, enable me to teach with wisdom, for I help to shape the mind. Equip me to teach with truth, for I help to shape the conscience. Encourage me to teach with vision, for I help to shape the future. Empower me to teach with love, for I help to shape the world. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We would like to take a moment to reflect on the events of our history that have led us to gather here today for the purpose of learning together. This traditional territory on which we record is of the Indigenous peoples of the Treaty 6 region and the Métis settlements and Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 2, 3, and 4. We are recording from our beautiful studios here at Lumen Christi, our common home in Edmonton Catholic Schools. Today's episode is titled, Understanding the New Alberta Curriculum. The agenda for the episode begins again with our TSA segment, Tricky Situations and Assessment with Nicole Lafreniere, our Director of Curriculum and Assessment. Nicole will help us understand and navigate these tricky situations so that we can improve our practice. Our interview today is with Trish Rofi, our Manager of Elementary Curriculum. She's going to give us an overview of new curriculum and what it means for teachers and students. And she's also going to share with us some of the ways that Edmonton Catholic Schools are supporting teachers within our division and across the province in understanding this new curriculum. We also have an interview with one of our teachers, Karen Banyak, and she will share with us some of the ways that she's been engaging with new curriculum and engaging with collaborative learning with her colleagues and with learning services. We'll also have our segment, We're Still Doing That, with Deputy Superintendent Tim Cusack. He'll help us explore outdated assessment practices and find solutions to help us move forward. That's the plan for today. Let's jump in.
Mr. Clark teaches grade 3. He feels like he needs to create different assessments for different students based on their individual needs. He is overwhelmed. How can universally designed assessments support him?
I think what Mr. Clark needs to remember is that there is going to be less of a lift if he approaches his planning with a UDL framework in mind. And what I mean by that is he needs to consider how he's planning his instruction for all students rather than thinking about how to tailor assessments after the instruction. Because if you're tailoring the assessment, I absolutely agree with him in that if I'm tailoring my assessment after I've already taught, then I have to look at, okay, what are the strengths and weaknesses of each student, which students require accommodations for those assessments, which students require additional supports or scaffolds. Whereas if he were to plan, and so we'll use the new curriculum as that planning, springboard, if he were to plan with UDL in mind, then that actually reduces the amount of work after the fact. So if you look at the new curriculum, you look at the learning outcome. The learning outcome is fairly broad, and so that offers that low ceiling, high floor perspective. So you can come in at varying points of that outcome for different students, and then you scaffold that instruction ahead of time. You plan for that instruction, and then you plan for the assessment ahead of time. So you're planning for multiple modes of delivery. So how can I deliver this particular outcome? And I'm using the cusps, of course, but I'm also keeping in mind my class profile. So I'm thinking, this group of students are going to require me to approach it in this particular way. This group of students are going to require a little bit more individualized supports. How can I structure the routines in my classroom so that I'm able to provide those supports within my instruction? And then what I can do is provide that voice and choice in pre-planning my assessment, so that that assessment isn't just one tool, but I have already pre-planned a few different ways of getting to that learning outcome at the end. So rather than thinking, we're on one train, everybody's on the same train, and then we're going to break out into varying different train cars, I start out with planning 4 different train cars, and I carry everyone all the way through. So the planning starts at the beginning rather than branching off in multiple different ways at the end. And I think what Mr. Clark would find is that he would find that kids are going to hop on the train where they can, and he's going to be able to carry them through from beginning to end with much less of kind of scrambling after the fact. So that's how I think that that UDL would be able to help him approach his differentiation a little bit differently.
Welcome to the show, Trish.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So today we'll be talking about new curriculum, but before we begin, do you want to talk a little bit about your role with new curriculum?
Absolutely. So I'm Trish Rofi, and I'm the manager of elementary curriculum. And it's been an exciting new role because, as we're aware, our province has introduced 7 grade levels and 5 new curriculums in 2 years. So we have a busy adventure in our role.
How does the new curriculum differ from the previous one?
I think some of the big differences is a lot of these curriculums are quite old. We know that some of them have a legacy of being there for 20 years before that they have actually been changed. And the rate of change in our planet in 20 years has been quite exponential. And so I think what's exciting is that we're looking at these curriculums not in just isolated subject areas, but what we're seeing how organizing ideas can be built across grade levels, across multiple subjects. We're seeing more consistency between the different subject areas and how they're structured. And I think that's going to help teachers really create that cross-curricular experience authentically in an elementary classroom.
With that alignment across the grade levels, and I'm assuming also within subject areas, how does this help support conceptual understanding for students and help teachers drive at that?
I think that's one of the biggest differences of our new curriculum. I think, our legacy curriculum is what we could see is we would have these general learner outcomes, and then we would have very specific learner outcomes for students. And, we could check those off. You teach it, you move on. And that was hard for a lot of teachers because they would say, but what about these students who haven't got it yet? What about these students who were never quite at that level? How can I teach this and move on to this? And so what's nice about this new curriculum is it's structured in a way that it allows for a low floor, high ceiling. We can move backwards and move ahead because of the organizing ideas across grade levels. But as well, the difference here being that even though that there are knowledge-specific cusps, skills and procedures, the doing, ultimately all of that together is to help build understanding. And so the biggest difference between that, if people don't have an understanding of conceptual understanding, when we have, say, knowledge or just straight memorization, that can help us in a lot of ways. Like I can maybe recall something quickly. I have that piece of trivia or information. But if we look at the guiding framework for this new curriculum, they tell us explicitly that knowledge can't just be isolated facts and trivia. We learn that through the doing, through that action and experience to build towards our own personal understanding, meaning I can apply it in new and novel ways, often in real life context. Perhaps I could teach it to others, put it in my own words. I've created my own version of this knowledge in my head that makes sense. And so a lot of research shows, memorization and retention. So you cram for a test, you memorize. We probably all did this in university, and I can make it through. It just holds it in my head for the next couple of hours. But they look at retention over months and years, and you see dramatic drops in that retention when it was just focused on memorization and knowledge. But when you can look at conceptual understanding, meaning in brain science that you have packaged that and stored that in your own brain in your own way, you hold on to that much longer. And that's what we want. We want students who are able to take this and apply it to another situation next year, this subject area, this part of their lives. And so I'm very excited for the opportunities of this new curriculum.
Your response with conceptual understanding really fits well into the framework of an outcomes-based education system. And here at Edmonton Catholic Schools, we have our levels of achievement in our assessment practices. So how we're building students up from beginning to a standard of excellence or even that proficiency level. So in relation to mastery, how does this curriculum support teachers and students in knowing where to go for mastery?
I think that's the most exciting part is we actually have a true opportunity to show growth over time. And so when we look at this, we do have larger learning outcomes that at first can feel intimidating. Like, how can students in grade 3 know numbers up to 100,000 like in September? But that's not the idea. That's our target. That's our end-year goal. But those cusps, the knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures, those are those breadcrumb experiences that we layer on, we repeat back to and circle back, we add more depth to, so that we can help students gain that incremental success for their own personal success towards that learning outcome by the end of the school year. So we don't have that pressure of, well, this week we're learning, multiplication and we move on. Like, no, that's not what we're doing. And so I think it truly allows students to have personal mastery as opposed to this timed amount of time. We just got to check it off and keep going. And sorry if you didn't get it, but there's your mark. And so with our outcome-based assessment, it's allowing us to really show growth over time.
Getting those multiple opportunities to achieve something. It's not just a one and done.
Absolutely not. And I think if we think of the developmentally appropriate practice with this age level of students, we can't teach elementary the same as we would teach junior high and high school. I mean, don't get me wrong. Good teaching is good teaching and good assessment is good assessment. But I do think we have to put certain practices into place. And what we know with our younger learners is that they have to have multiple opportunities for repeated exposure. Think about learning to tie your shoe. If I only spent 2 days with you learning how to tie your shoe and that's it, that's all the time we have, you're going to be like, forget it, Velcro is better. I need to go back to that. Where really, if I can allow you multiple opportunities, multiple chances to learn that, different avenues, looping back to it, you're going to have a much better success experience because you've been given that. And that's what our younger students need.
Down to it by the TQS?
Well, that's what you think. We want success for all students. And the TQS doesn't tell us that there's a time frame for their success. We're looking at these students across many years of their educational career. And so I think the other piece that we are celebrating with this new curriculum is we know that our students are coming to us at many different levels. And that's okay. We acknowledge that reality and we want to be able to focus on your success and your learning journey. And we have multiple pathways to do that. So I'm excited about that.
And for our listeners who may not be in elementary, this is a guiding framework for kindergarten to grade 12.
We're going to see this keep going. I know, yes. Absolutely. And I think maybe back to what I said about good teaching's good teaching and good assessment's good assessment. I think that our students that are perhaps in some of those higher grade levels that feel that pressure, especially as they're starting to think about those real life opportunities ahead of them and their career pathways, the pressure of I've got one and done. And if I mess this up and I lose this opportunity, where it's like, no, we're going to work with you on this journey so that you can gain these understandings in that depth, in that solid foundation to prepare you for your future. And so I know that's a big change, but I hope we can help pave the way for some of that for older grades.
We're going to shift a little bit.
Okay.
There's been a drastic reduction of outcomes, right? We have maybe 8 to 10 within a subject area. And I think a lot of our teachers have been asking, well, this changes my assessment practice. What do I do with this? So could you give us a bit of a path forward for why these outcomes have been reduced or how that supports an outcomes-based education system?
Absolutely. So again, these outcomes are large umbrellas of opportunity. So again, they are, even though reduced in number, they're still vast in the opportunities for students to gain a lot of understanding. And I think what the number one change to our assessment practice has to be is I don't have those micro niche assessments that I just check off and move on. What I really need to do is show evidence of learning, that making learning visible so that I can demonstrate growth over time. So again, something as simple as a portfolio, being able to show a student how they're constructing their understanding, maybe how they're manipulating and understanding place value. Perhaps I have some audio files of students with their reading and almost like their own created running record. Maybe I'm looking at their growth of understanding in scientific method when they're doing research in our new science curriculum. And so what it allows is students to start at their starting line. And then where are we getting them to in that learning outcome? And so I'm very excited to see teachers out there be very creative with how do we show this ongoing growth within the learning outcome. We're seeing digital portfolios being created in things like Google Slides. We're seeing, there's nothing wrong with those paper portfolios, being able to look at maybe Friday envelopes, demonstration of learning, parent engagement nights. And so I think what's important is helping our students and our families know this is the thread. This is that outcome we're working towards. Here's that cusp, that is that breadcrumb opportunity getting us to that target.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's exciting is we're not just looking at a singular moment that some of our former assessments maybe looked at. It's giving us a story of that student's learning. And so we're working very closely with our elementary teachers to say, how do we make that story come to life so parents can understand that?
I'm holding on to the concept of making learning visible.
Yes.
So moving away from that traditional grade book, really de-emphasizing that traditional grade, and how is it visible and real for students, teachers, and their families?
Absolutely. Like, listen, you know what? We need our grades. We need our levels of achievement. We have to have those signposts that tell us in that moment of time, that's what you made it to. But I think the biggest question is, how did you get there and where are you going? And so we have an opportunity with making learning visible to use that triangulation of assessment, images, audio, video, print. What are all of those multiple opportunities you had to work with, explore, manipulate as you got towards this understanding? And I think instead of it being a static and finished moment in time, it's simply another pin on the map of your journey. And so it will allow you to know your next steps, your next direction. That I think allows parents to feel confident that their student is showing growth. I think it gives teachers the confidence to know, where am I going next with this student? And it also gives students the confidence to go, I'm getting this. I'm learning this. I can see where I've been and where I've made it to. And so when that Trinity partnership comes together and has that same understanding, that's that true learning. I think then it lets everyone take a breath of relief.
So we've been talking maybe a bit theoretical about new curriculum at this point. So what has the division been doing to make this concrete and make this come to life for teachers?
We have to make it actionable. And I think, you can't downplay the fact that never in the history of our province have we released 7 grade levels and 5 subject areas of curriculum in less than 2 calendar years. It feels like an Everest. And so we had to have a balance of making sure that our teachers not only had a strength and understanding of the what is this new curriculum? What are the components of it? How is it structured? But we didn't want to lose the pedagogy of the how. And sometimes when we're so panicked with what's new, we can go to that lowest common denominator of I just got to get through this knowledge, this information. And so a few things that we've created to really help teachers feel like they've got a bit of a life jacket to stay afloat is we've done some things like pacing guides. We quite literally have a map of what the learning will look like across all of the subject areas in an elementary reality for that month of time. We give you classroom instructional ideas, assessment ideas for that triangulation, technology ideas, student templates, rubrics. We try to create that holistic experience because elementary teachers don't teach subject to subject and bell to bell. We have a real opportunity to have that true cross-curricular approach. We've also really focused on universal design so that it can support all of our learners. So we take the new Learn Alberta, that new curriculum, we funnel it down to these pacing guides, and then finally we create curriculum crates. And these are just sort of our cheeky little, imagine HelloFresh being delivered to your door and it has all the different ingredients and meal components. And maybe you're a beginning cook and you can follow that recipe and you will have a very nutritional, excellent meal. Maybe someone who has a little bit more experience in the kitchen can use their pedagogical pantry to spice it up. They know the dietary needs of this student, kind of thing. So these curriculum crates are created by our consultants and our teacher working groups. We've been so fortunate to work with 135 teachers from Edmonton Catholic schools across K-6 to help with this work. And we create these sort of perfect jump-off lessons to act as an idea, maybe to let you try on the new curriculum for size. We dissect the outcomes. We create all of the resources you would need for that lesson. And then hopefully it inspires you to follow that type of planning to keep going, but also it was just that one less thing you had to worry about today. And so we're very fortunate to have all of those resources available K-6, every subject area, every grade level, to help our teachers so that they can focus on those pedagogical points.
Here at Learning Services, it sounds like we really want our teachers to thrive. So we're giving them everything that they need to
Absolutely.
get there.
When we are faced with something new and challenging, we want to fill that toolkit with what's going to help us. So we want to help them fill it with things that are strong. We don't want to take away from TQS3 with that effective planning. We want to support them in their effective planning. So it's that balance of, please don't worry. We have all of this to get you started. This is a lot new. We're here at the elbow with you. But also they can learn from that and use that. And so our feedback has been good. Teachers excited that this is there for them and wanting to work with us more. We're in the classrooms modeling and supporting, doing targeted support, as well as that whole scale PD we can do as well. We try to make our curriculum crates, I think a little bit over 80% of them are in fact cross-curricular. So you'll see multiple subject areas coming together. But again, that gives an opportunity to not focus on just knowledge or memorization, but conceptual understanding, especially when you're bringing multiple subject areas together. So one example of that is we're looking at our new phys ed and wellness curriculum, where we're looking at money and making money-related decisions in grade 2. That's a different concept for those students, especially if maybe they haven't made purchases themselves. There's a lot of digital transactions they see their parents do. It's kind of out there. So we actually looked at our existing legacy social studies curriculum where we explore occupations of communities. So again, instead of just memorizing, number denominations of money and memorizing occupations, we put the two worlds together. And what students did is they had to look up and research occupations from communities, but then they created a farmer's market. Based on those occupations, we were able to allow them to make some money-making decisions of how much would I sell this for? What goods and services can I get with the money that I've made? And they had a classroom farmer's market. We saw this come to life in several classrooms this year, and it was just exciting because students got that understanding of both occupations and financial decisions without relying on memorization.
Excellent. If you're interested in this grade 2 curriculum crate, we'll have it linked in the description.
Awesome.
This being so new for teachers, do you have any advice on where they could start?
I think first and foremost, give yourself the gift of time. Be kind to yourself. This is very new. And it is a lot. When we haven't changed legacy curriculums for over 20 years, it can feel even worse that there's been a huge change, especially coming out of, 2 very challenging years in education with COVID and things like that. It does feel like one more thing. But I think the best advice is to allow yourself to take those incremental learning opportunities. You don't need to know all 10 months right now, all 7 subjects. We can really build that understanding as well with our teachers. Collaborate, talk with, learn from each other. You're not alone. It can feel like that in that classroom. You might have a complex classroom, that door shuts and you think, I'm the only one here. But please reach out to your colleagues, reach out to consultants, share those ideas with each other, and understand that new curriculum is not an event, it is a process. Any type of implementation, research shows, takes at least 3 years to really take hold. So this was our best attempt at this part of our own learning journey. And we need to allow ourselves that same repetition, returning to the concepts, that same practice that we're offering for our students. We need to give ourselves that opportunity as well so that we can learn. So I say, reach out. How did you do this? How did you do this? There's so many ways to approach this type of learning, and just really taking advantage that we are a community of professionals that help each other.
When teachers collaborate, students win. Can you speak to some of the collaborative opportunities that Learning Services has for teachers?
This part, I do think, I can't agree more. Like, that just gave me chills. Students win. We may not have had as much of a voice in the actual writing of the curriculum as teachers would have liked, but something that was imperative to the work that we're doing in Learning Services is that we get teacher voice. You're in the trenches. You know if this is realistic or not. You know if this is actionable or not. And so, like I said before, we have 135 teachers that come in, that work with us, that look at our pacing guides, help us create curriculum crates, that are going out and doing them and trying them in their classrooms. And so I think that is incredible. We offer events like summer summits where people can come together and even before school starts feel empowered and ready to be able to put that work. And then, of course, we have school teams. And this is one of the really exciting opportunities where we're saying, you know what? Come in, bring your administrator, bring 2 of your teachers. You can change those teachers each time. And we're going to come in and we're going to have an experience of what's to come. Not just here's some information about the upcoming months. Of course, we need information. But we're going to have an experience of those learning opportunities together to gain that muscle memory so that we can go back to our schools and put that in place. Whether that is some co-teaching, maybe you're doing some process work or staff room work as part of your Thursday PDs, maybe you're doing some modeling. But I just think we've tried to really create that environment of that safe experiential learning so that they actually can put it into place in their classrooms and feel confident in that.
This is all so wonderful. I'm hoping our listeners walk away feeling ready to take on new curriculum.
You know what? We have a big year coming up. We know that this was just our first year. And again, it's not an event, it's that process. And so next year, we're really focusing on that K-6 elementary school experience. We have summits planned. We have a whole new version of school teams planned. We're going to have even more curricular resources for all of these subject areas. So we're very excited to share all of our dreams coming to life in the next few months.
So we'll have in the description, we'll have our SharePoint linked, we'll have our YouTube channel linked, and do follow us on Instagram because that's where you'll keep up to date with all the stuff that we're putting out.
And another really exciting thing is we do have an opportunity to collaborate with our other school divisions. If anybody is watching, we have a public-facing resource site that we will share as part of this description, and you can see some of those curriculum crates and pacing guides in action.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Trish.
Thanks for having me. It was wonderful.
What? Are we still doing that? Stop it! One and done? Like I get one chance to do something and that's it? So that's very old school. Just like me, that used to be the case. Little Timmy would get one chance to do the test, and if little Timmy didn't pass the test, that was locked in time. Never had a chance to recover or recoup from that. Let's face it, we want kids to have the opportunity to demonstrate learning over time. We know that mastery learning is that ultimate summit of where we want to move students along that continuum of learning. So from that surface level of understanding to a deeper level of understanding to those extensions of learning, we have to be so much better than one opportunity. And so sometimes we have to realize that giving a child a second, third chance, or how about this? Did you ever have You did an essay maybe in September and one in November and then one in May, and the teacher simply averaged the three of those together. Why not look at that third one in May or June, more of that summative time of year when you really need to get a sense of how the students have progressed? And that's where they're demonstrating what they've accomplished over that period of time. A one and done, wow, that's very limiting. What do you think would be helpful in having better practices in this area?
Welcome to the show, Karen. It's fantastic to have you on today.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about your experience so far working with the new Alberta curriculum.
I've had a couple different ways that I've been working with the new curriculum. First way that I've been working with it is through our district community of practice group. Came into Lumen Christi, and we went and examined the curriculum and with the consultants. They went over everything. They showed us different curriculum crates, which was really interesting. We got to do different kinds of activities. We saw how it fit with the new curriculum. And so that was actually really informative. And then we were asked to go back to our school and share what we had learned with any of the teachers that didn't get to come back. So that was the first way that we sort of started to get involved with it. And then the second way was when you had advertised on the Staff Week at a Glance about doing a community of practice, building units and examining the curriculum. And so I joined that community, and it's been really, really informative. I've learned a lot by doing that. So what we do is we sort of delve into the curriculum and we look at the different pieces of the curriculum. And what we're doing right now at this point is we are starting to build our own units as a team. And it's really interesting, the dialogue that we have, right, when we're talking about the different parts of the curriculum, because we all have different insights.
I heard is two groups you're a part of. So those school teams days where we get to do a quick overview of the entire curriculum and what's new and what's upcoming, and then a more hands-on, which is our COP for planning with the end in mind, where we really embody that backwards design practice, looking at the outcome, looking at those learning intentions, success criteria.
Yes.
Yeah. So with all this collaborative professional learning, what stands out? What's most beneficial to you?
I think that any kind of collaboration is really important, first of all. I really strongly believe in collaboration. Two minds are definitely better than one. I always get a lot of really wonderful ideas that sort of pop into my mind when I hear people talking, things that I might not have thought of before. So the collaboration process is, to me anyways, is really important. I think that my lessons are much better developed by collaborating with others. And there's so many different things that we can get out of it.
How has collaborative learning and that backwards planning helped support you in teaching that combined grade?
So the really nice thing about our new curriculum is the layout, because there's a progression. You see the different grades side by side by side. And so when you're teaching a combined grade, because we need to get both outcomes covered, it's really easy with the new curriculum to see how they coincide and what similarities they have. And so for me, it's really helped me sort of envision where my class needs to go as a combined grade. So that's to start with. And then with our community of practice, we've been going into the curriculum. We've been looking at the cusps, right? And we've been examining to see what kind of lessons can we teach in that backward design model. So we're looking at the cusps, we're examining them, we're talking about them, and then we say, okay, what kind of assessments do we need to do so that our students are demonstrating what they're supposed to be understanding? And then we go on and we're looking at the different types of activities that they need to be doing in order to do that. And then we're sort of writing our lessons to go from that. So it's been a really great process.
In this backwards design planning, we've been working on writing learning intentions and success criteria and really planning for teacher clarity to occur in the classroom. Have you had a chance to test out any of that with new curriculum in your classroom?
Yeah, actually. So in the old days, we used to go and we used to just find activities that we thought would be really fun for the students, and it may have fit the curriculum, it may not have fit the curriculum, and so there we are trying to twig everything so that it fits, right? By working in our community of practice, we're sort of shifting the look, right? And so we've gone in and we're looking at, these are the skills, right? This is the knowledge that the students have to have. And so by doing that, it's really helpful because now I can go into the curriculum and I can say, okay, my students need to, right? And so it's just, I find it's a better way of looking at things because the clarity of my lesson is much better, right? I know where I'm needing to go, and I know what my students have to do or have to be able to do. And so I'm sort of going towards that more so than just doing some sort of activity because it's fun and it looks great on paper, and the parents will be really impressed as they walk by my classroom and see this on my wall.
Yeah. And have you tried anything with your students, and what's the impact on your students' learning? Like, how are they interacting with new curriculum?
They are doing like a really amazing job. I'm going to talk about the phonetics to start with. Like, we always taught phonetics. We always taught phonics. But now we're being more intentional about it because the new curriculum is requesting that we are more intentional in our phonetic lessons that we're teaching them. And one of the things that's coming out of that is a lot of the people in the district are now using sound walls. And my students today, even, one of my girls was trying to spell a few words. And so we looked at her words and I said, well, what do you think this says? And so she really looked at it and she's like, oh, she's like, this is a short I. It's supposed to be a long I. And so I said, okay, so how could we figure out what you need to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so she looked up and she looked at the sound wall and she went over and she was like, I think I need to add an E on the end. And I said, yes, exactly. Right? And so she went in and she fixed her errors. And then all of a sudden everything made sense. And so I'm finding that in the past, students didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
They were just sort of spelling phonetically sometimes, or they were coming up to me with their personal dictionaries and they're like, can you spell this word for me? And I'm like, it's right here, honey. And now they're actually trying to spell on their own, and I actually can read their work without asking them to come over and say, okay, what does this say? Can you tell me what this says? I don't need to do that as much anymore. So just that one piece is essentially new in the curriculum, but it's coming a long ways. And this is just in 1 year.
That's amazing to hear that already this new curriculum, even though we're exploring it and we're implementing it for the first year, there's already significant impact that it's having on our students. So I'm curious, with it being a new curriculum and it's our first year implementing it, pacing of the curriculum has been a challenge. Yes. for everyone. Have you come up with ways to overcome that, or do you have ideas for next year on how you could work towards pacing out this new curriculum?
Pacing out curriculum is always a challenge, right? No matter what. In a combined grade, it's even harder because, like I said, I'm trying to get through 2 sets of curriculum. I'm definitely been challenged with it this year, but I'm quickly figuring out things that I can combine, right? Instead of having 3 lessons focusing on one thing, right? I'm trying to like combine things into, say, 1 lesson or 2 lessons. But I also still need to make sure that the understanding's there, right? Do they need more time? In math, for instance, I had to look at our addition and subtraction, right? We're doing addition and subtraction. And it's really nice because of the fact that in the new curriculum, you see a progression. You can see how things start and build on each other. And so with that, I was able to start with our grade 2 curriculum, and my grade 3 still did it, right? Because that was their review, right? And then I was able to do the next step with everybody again, and we were all doing it. And then I had my grade 2s go off, and now they're working on this piece while I expand for my grade 3s. So it makes it really easy to see how things go together and how things are like more of a progression.
I'm going to put you on the spot for a second.
Okay.
With new curriculum in learning services, we're starting to see those cross-curricular connections. Have you experimented with any of that this year?
A little bit. I do a lot of cross-curricular anyways. I'm still doing old science and social. And so I'm trying not to, because I know that things are going to be changing. I don't want to develop too many cross-curricular with science and social. But I do that naturally anyways. I quite often will be talking about something, and all of a sudden my mind will go on to something else that we've done, and so I just naturally bring it in. I talk a lot about our Indigenous culture throughout everything. It's a big thing in my classroom, so I'm always pulling that in. I have a ton of Indigenous books that I bring in, and I show the kids, and that's quite often where I start with a lot of things.
With new curriculum rolling out next year for grade 4, 5, and 6, what do you recommend for teachers? Where do they start? How do they start exploring within this new curriculum?
The first step that I did was examining the new curriculum myself. I know there were a lot of teachers out there that were quite nervous, and there was a lot of discussion as to all the changes. I think that a lot of people were nervous just because many of us have been teaching that same curriculum for all, if not most, of our teaching career. And so I like change. So I just started with examining the curriculum, and then I started talking with people that I knew that were teaching the same grades as me, and we got into that whole professional dialogue of what do you think this means? What's this asking us to do? What's this asking the children to do? And I think that dialogue is really, really important, so that we're all on the same page. And then after that, I started looking at different groups that I could get into, like our planning group, because of the collaboration piece. I think that's, especially when you're doing something new, having more hands, more minds, it lightens the work, so that we're sort of dividing it up a little bit, so you're not doing as much, or you're not having to do as much, but you also have more people with ideas that you can draw upon. And I think that in itself is very important, because a lot of times we do the same old, right? Oh, how can I fit what I'm previously doing into this new box? But you don't want to do that, right? Because we have a job to do. We have to educate our children, and this is what's being asked of us. And so we need to figure out how we can do it in the best way possible.
We're now at the end of the episode. But before we sign off, I would like to extend a huge thank you to Trish Rofi and Karen Banyak for their experiences and their knowledge about the new Alberta curriculum. Thank you to both Nicole Lafreniere and Tim Cusack for their segments. And last but not least, to you, our listeners. Thank you for tuning in with your support. We will be releasing episodes bi-weekly, with each episode featuring different voices and perspectives. Please like and subscribe to this channel to stay up to date with each release. In the meantime, follow us on Instagram at ECSD Learning, our YouTube channel at ECSD Learning 7786, and check out our many resources on our many SharePoint sites. All 3 links are in the episode description. We will also have the links for the curriculum crates and other resources discussed in this episode. And lastly, we want to hear from you, both on Spotify and on Instagram. We're inviting you to share your classroom experiences with assessment. Moving forward, we will feature our listeners in the conclusion of each episode. Help us celebrate you. Well, that's our time. See you next week on The Learning Curve.